restores wholeness. And without further ado, please welcome Matharu.
Thank you so much, Marcus, and thank you for that very warm introduction that you just did there for me. So can you see my screen okay? Yeah, perfect, okay. So you've already caught me at the top of this session as well, and Marcus's beautiful introduction. My name is Matharu. I am a breathwork and nervous system researcher and also a physiotherapist. So let me begin this session with a simple question. When we guide our practice or our breath work, how aware are we of the biological power of our breath and the profound systemic effects it creates? Today we're going to move beyond technique and into the mechanism. We're going to explore what's actually happening beneath the experience, so the mechanisms, the clinical science and the evidence showing that the breath may be the most powerful tool we have to restore balance across the entire body. And I do apologize because this is going to be content heavy, but I'm hoping you walk away today with more information on the science behind breath. So by the end, I hope we're going to recognize this year's theme as well, the pause, breathe and unite. It's an instruction that's written into our human physiology. So we have 20 minutes together and I want to really jump into this. So let's explore the theme. Okay, quick orientation. Here's where we're going. We'll move through the science of dysfunction, why it matters, clinically, the nervous system pathways that make breath so powerful, and on the end, I want to share a brief practice because we all know about those long journeys, but what about those short practices, breath practices that really can shift the needle on our state? So whether you're a clinician, a practitioner, or someone who's simply curious about why you feel better after a few conscious breaths, this talk may give you something to connect with. So let's start with a clinical picture. Again, numbers heavy, which I apologize about, but it's the only way to convey this from my perspective. Okay. Oh, where's my slide gone? Are you seeing dysfunctional breathing at the moment?
Yes, we are.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so a 2016 review in the European Respiratory Review established that across chronic fatigue, chronic pain, post-viral and unexplained dyspnea clinics, dysfunctional breathing may be present in 40 to 80% of our patients, depending on assessment methods and population, of course. So it's not rare. In fact, during my years in secondary care, it appears the norm in complex chronic illnesses, and it was usually the first place I had to start to help them learn to breathe correctly. In ME and chronic fatigue syndrome specifically, one study found 50 to 70% of patients demonstrate altered breathing, hyperventilation tendency, and reduced carbon dioxide tolerance, despite often normal lung function on standard tests. And in post-COVID, a 2021 study in European Respiratory Journal found that 60 to 80% of patients in specialist clinics showed breathing dysregulation as a primary driver of their ongoing symptoms. The proposed unifying mechanism is persistent threat physiology, autonomic dysregulation, altered chemoreceptor sensitivity, and impaired carbon dioxide tolerance across all these conditions. So breath isn't just a symptom in these conditions, it's part of the pattern holding the body in survival mode, and it may also be, in that case, the doorway that helps people find their way back to good health. So now that we've established the scale of the problem, let's be practical about how we recognize it and what to do. I love what Alex said in his talk earlier and made reference to how he looks at breath. From a physiotherapy assessment perspective, I'm looking at 4 things. Pattern. Is this person basically breathing from the upper chest? Am I seeing the neck and the shoulder muscles actively working on a normal resting breath? Is there lateral costal expansion absent, which all just basically means, is there sideway movement of that rib cage? These are immediate visual cues that the diaphragm is not doing its job. The second thing I look for is mouth breathing. Is this person's default breath coming through the nose or coming through the mouth? Mouth breathing at rest is a significant clinical flag. It bypasses the nasal sinuses where nitric oxide is produced. It reduces carbon dioxide tolerance and maintains sympathetic nervous system tone. So you're in that fight or flight response. Third thing I look at is rate and rhythm. Anything above 14 breaths per minute at rest usually catches my attention. But I'm not just counting breaths, I'm listening to that frequent kind of the sighing, the yawning, the audible breathing, that throat clearing. These are often adaptive behaviors of a nervous system trying to regulate, because it often also shows that that nervous system is more dysregulated than it's actually regulated. And the fourth thing for me is posture. You can't breathe into a slumped thorax. Those rounded shoulders, forward head posture, like a thoracic kyphosis in your spine, all of these mechanically compromise the diaphragm before the patient's even taken a breath. And what do we do for intervention? Well, I always start with posture. Tall sitting, gentle chin tuck, relaxed jaw, then nasal breathing as a default. Then diaphragmatic re-engagement. And I want to make a clear distinction that diaphragmatic breathing is not deep breathing. It's efficient, low effort breathing that uses the right muscles. Finally, we gradually pace the respiratory rate, not immediately down, but slowly we start bringing that respiratory rate down. We start up potentially around about 10 to 12 breaths per minute. We extend the exhale and build carbon dioxide tolerance over time. So, what does chronic dysfunctional breathing actually do to our body? Let's go system by system. When we overbreathe, and by that I mean breathe too fast, too shallow, through the mouth and from the upper chest, we're blowing off a lot of carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide, a lot of people misinterpret carbon dioxide. It's not just a waste gas. It's the primary trigger for vasodilation, which is opening up of the vessels, and also oxygen release from hemoglobin. When we lose it, smooth muscle contracts. Blood vessels, they basically narrow, and the brain is getting less oxygen, even if the lungs are full of oxygen. At the same time, the breathing pattern is an ancient threat signal. The body registers it and keeps the sympathetic nervous system switched on. So cortisol stays elevated, the HPA axis remains dysregulated, and the vagal brake, which is supposed to modulate inflammation, it stays disengaged. The result is feeling wired, exhausted, inflamed, cognitively impaired, and blood work that's coming back potentially normal. Because this is a patient whose investigations, although they're coming back normal with all their markers within clear ranges, they're clearly unwell just because of the way they're breathing. So this is what Boulding and colleagues call persistent threat physiology, a unifying mechanism across chronic fatigue, pain, post-viral conditions as well. The breath is both a marker and a maintaining mechanisms. And most crucially, this is where it gets good. It's most accessible at any point. So it's the one lever that you can use at any point just to change the narrative on your health. So now let's look at why breath is uniquely positioned to change all of this. So breath, as we just mentioned, is the only physiological system that sits both under voluntary and autonomic control. That means it's the only lever we can consciously pull to directly shift our nervous system state. The polyvagal theory, which many of us are probably familiar with, was developed by Stephen Porges. It's given as a framework, the autonomic nervous system, that is basically in 3 hierarchical states. The ventral vagal state, where we are safe, regulated and connected. We've got the sympathetic state, which is our fight or flight mode, and the dorsal vagal state, which is our freeze and shut down. The key insight is this: a slow, extended exhale directly activates the ventral vagal pathway, which is where we want to be most of the time. It's a biological sign of safety. And unlike our thoughts, which the brain can dismiss, this signal lands in the body first. So it's not just a relaxation technique, it's autonomic repatterning through physiological input. So how do we measure it? Now, heart rate variability is how we measure this nervous system health objectively, and it's the bridge between everything we've just discussed and what's measurable in clinic. High heart rate variability means the nervous system is flexible, it's adaptive, and it's regulated. Low heart rate variability means it's rigid, it's stuck, and it's running on threat physiology. In 2017, this study by Laborde et al. Positioned heart rate variability as a biomarker not just of cardiac health, but emotional regulation, executive function, and adaptive stress resilience. So let's just also really quickly touch upon this resonance frequency I've just mentioned here as well. Breathing at around 0.1 hertz, which is approximately 6 breaths per minute, synchronizes respiration with the baroreflex oscillation of the cardiovascular system. When these two rhythms phase synchronize, heart rate variability amplitude is maximized. Baroreflex sensitivity, it improves, and vagal afferent signaling to the brain is enhanced as well. And a critical review in 2020 confirmed this across clinical populations, noting importantly that resonance frequency varies slightly between individuals. It's around 5 to 6 breaths per minute, not just the standard 6, and ideally it should be assessed and personalized rather than universally just prescribed. So the takeaway from this is that heart rate variability biofeedback training also significantly reduces a lot of what we're seeing in clinic these days, which is stress and anxiety. And heart rate variability, it's a clinical tool, but with our wearables these days, we can use it personally just to track where our heart rate variability is and what activities is increasing that heart rate variability, which means that we've got better sensitivity, or whether it's reducing it. So this is the part that I do find really exciting clinically, and one that's often missing from any of our breathwork conversations. Kevin Tracy's work described the cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway. Fundamentally, it's changed how we understand immunity. The vagus nerve doesn't only regulate heart rate and digestion, it forms part of a neuroimmune reflex capable of modulating inflammation. When vagal paths here are activated, acetylcholine can suppress the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines such as the TNF-alpha. One accessible way we can influence this vagal signaling is slow diaphragmatic breathing, a practice shown to increase parasympathetic activity and shift autonomic balance towards regulation. And this isn't purely theoretical either. In 2014, as we can see here, Knox and colleagues demonstrated that trained participants using breathing, meditation, and cold exposure techniques are able to voluntarily attune their inflammatory response to bacterial endotoxins. In other words, conscious regulation of physiology influences immune function. And so for those working with chronic inflammatory conditions like chronic pain, autoimmunity, long COVID, fatigue syndromes, this brain-body immune connection clinically becomes very relevant. This is an evidence base, and an evidence base I won't really go into too heavily, but due to the respect of time, but really quickly, we have resonance breathing is one of the most reliable non-pharmacological methods for improving vagal tone and baroreflex sensitivity. Heart rate variability biofeedback training produces significant, consistent reductions in anxiety and stress. Slow breathing directly influences limbic and brainstem networks. Breath literally there is changing the brain. And breathing rehabilitation It improves fatigue, anxiety, dyspnea, and functional capacity in long COVID patients. Respiratory vagal stimulation directly influences the autonomic nervous system's anxiety, depression, and trauma. Another reason why breathwork belongs in every trauma-informed practice. So I won't go into these studies in major detail, that was just a quick highlight, but this will be shared so people can actually have that as a tool in their toolbox. So what actually changes when someone starts to regulate their nervous system through the breath? I've been privileged to witness this clinically, and what I can tell you is that the changes aren't subtle. Sleep improves, often within the first 2 weeks of regulating your breathing. Inflammation markers begin to fall. Cognitive clarity returns. Hormonal cascade that was running on cortisol starts to rebalance. So for women in perimenopause, breathing correctly is fundamental. And most importantly, people describe that feeling of just feeling like themselves again. So this is more than just relaxation, it's a nervous system being given that physiological condition to do what it was designed to do. And that is more than what we can say for a lot of these interventions that we have these days. But we need this breath to help regulate, to help repair, to restore, and more importantly, the body's just waiting for this signal. So I want to just pause here and name what this work is actually about. It's not about breathing better. It's about coming home to the body. So many of the people I work with, and I suspect many of you guys have come across them, maybe in your practices, in relatives, in friends. They've been in survival mode for so long that they've forgotten what it feels like to be regulated. They've adapted to dysregulation as their baseline. What corrective breathwork does at a deepest level is not just calm them down physically, it restores the physiological conditions for being fully and just feeling fully alive, just for healing, for connection, for the kind of wholeness that no supplement or therapy can reach, because it starts in the body itself. And that's what I mean by coming home to the body's intelligence. So I whizzed through the first part because it's all very much science related, but I'm hoping you catch the replay and really do understand some of the science behind this. I'm going to lead you into a small practice, and the practice is to take a moment to just do what we've been talking about. So I'm going to guide you through a physiological side, one of the most evidence-supported acute downregulation techniques that we have, and available at any time. And because it's so simple, you can use it at any time. Just see it as another tool in your toolbox. It takes literally seconds to do. So what I want you to do is close your eyes, if that feels comfortable for you, and let your hands just rest on your lap. I want you to take a slow first inhale in through the nose, slow and full. Let the belly go first, then the chest. Hold it at the top. Now a second short inhale on top, just like a sniff, to fully inflate those air sacs. And now a long, slow exhale through the mouth. Let it be twice as long as the inhale. Let the body release. And we're going to practice that a few more times. So inhale in through the nose, just slow and full. And a second short inhale on the top, like a sniff. And a long, slow exhale through the mouth. Let that body let go. And again, in through the nose, slow and full. Let the belly go first, then the chest. Now a second short inhale right at the top, followed by a long, slow exhale through the mouth. Do one more. A slow inhale through the nose. Let it be full into the belly, into the sides, into the chest. And at the top, a second short inhale, like a sniff. And a long, slow exhale through the mouth, twice as long as the inhale. And gently return. Notice what you notice. Notice what just happened in your body. This is vagal activation. And come back. So let me leave you with this. Breath is not a wellness add-on. It's our foundational biology. It connects the nervous system, the immune system, the cardiovascular system, the endocrine system, all through one mechanism, and that's the vagal tone. And the most important thing for us is that we can access it voluntarily. So my message to everyone today is, before you panic about any health trajectory, start with assessing your own breathing patterns. Have a look. Where are you compromising that breath? Where are you not breathing normally? Is it in your pace? Is it in your structure? Is it in the way that your posture is? Or is it in the rate? When you pay more conscious attention on the how, then move on to techniques that support the vagus nerve. That starts with a longer exhale. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And I know I've whizzed through that, but I wanted to make the heavy content as painless as possible.
Thank you so much. What an in-depth, deep dive. But one of the things that I truly appreciate is that it helps bring a level of scientific understanding to some practices that we might have experienced in a class or in a session that we didn't truly, not necessarily need to know all of the underlying mechanics in order to feel the benefits. But it doesn't hurt to have that understanding whenever it's available, and of course, made so readily digestible as you did. And one of my favorite parts that you highlighted was that the breath is the core function, and it's almost the key to being able to access something that straddles the boundary, that straddles that borderline between the autonomic system and what we can voluntarily control. And that's such an important perspective that I don't think about every day, to say the least. And so to have that forefront, it helps open up the mind to the other possibilities that you then share about all these scientific benefits that you can feel when you take this breath practice, because it bypasses you needing to think about the benefits, and it just injects them immediately because it is coming through the body, from the body first and foremost. And it's not something that you can supplement, as you mentioned before.
Absolutely, so correct there, Marcus, and you've hit the nail on the head. And it doesn't take us very long to feel those benefits either. So once we actually get going with our breath and implementing it, like one of the presenters said earlier on, it's very much about discipline. How much can we discipline ourselves to do this practice on a daily basis and really bring conscious connection to our breath, so that we can actually benefit from all these beautiful changes that we can really take advantage of within our body, and really feel the benefits of, I should say. Yeah. So no, appreciate that.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, and looking forward to enjoying the rest of the day along with you as my co-host, but also now I'm looking forward to seeing you in another perspective when I potentially come join any other classes or courses that you have to offer, because this has been enlightening to start. So I don't know if you want to share a little bit more there.
Sure.